One of my favorite Audacious ad men was Stan Freberg. He had a way of capturing attention by turning typical advertising way back in the 1970s on its ear. He was even rather prescient about AI, as demonstrated in this crazy TV commercial for a candy bar.
So, while I was in Florida, you really picked the name for our new candy bar, huh?
The computer picked it, really.
Yeah, what is it?
I fed in the information how it's just like the Clark bar inside, except that instead of the chocolatey coating, it's got the toasted coconut
but
thing.
what name did the computer pick?
Zagnut.
Zagnut?
Zagnut.
That is, without a doubt, the lousiest name for a candy bar I have ever heard. What's this? You actually printed a little label saying Zagnut and wrapped it around this candy bar?
The fact is, we printed a number of little labels and wrapped them around.
How many labels?
Oh, approximately.
How many bars?
15, 20 million.
Yeah. Well, that's not such a bad name.
Thus was Zagnut, sister ship of the Clark bar, born. As you crunch into one, remember, a Zagnut by any other name would be a good thing.
Hello and welcome to the Business of Story, your resource for the latest and greatest happenings in brand storytelling. I'm Park Howell, and you know what? One of my recent all-time favorite marketers joins us to share his new book, Audacious: How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. Now, if you are in the marketing world, then you no doubt have heard of Mark Schaefer. He's a globally recognized author, keynote speaker, futurist, marketing professor, business consultant, and, well, damn good guy. I loved Audacious because it is brimming with stories of crazy promotional stunts, wacky word-of-mouth marketing, and awe-inducing customer experiences that will inspire you to get a little nutty with your brand storytelling. So settle in and learn how you can capture the fascinated attention of your prospects and customers on this edition of the Business of Story with my good friend, Mark Schaefer. Welcome, Mark. It's an absolute delight to have you here right on the show.
Thank you, Park. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Well, your book, Audacious, has been a blast to read. You know, in some respects, I kind of feel like it's the modern day Purple Cow.
Oh, interesting. Maybe. Yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit. But I'm honored that you even made that connection and reference to the great Seth Godin's book. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it was one of the first Seth Godin books I read way back in the day, and then I bought everybody in my ad agency a copy of it and said, here, read this. And I had some people in the agency kind of turn their nose up to it because he was talking about sort of audacious things 25 years ago, but not to the level it is today.
I hadn't really thought about it that way before, but I like that. Yeah, so hopefully I'm still carrying the flag or carrying it in a new way.
Oh, you absolutely are. And because times have changed, mediums have changed, how we talk about brands have changed. And so I think you've completely leveled it up to be as modern as it could possibly be. But having said that, I want to jump back to your early days real quick. Just a quick little backstory. What in the world got you into marketing in the first place?
It was one sentence in a book. Isn't that a great way to start a story?
Well, what was the sentence?
Well, literally, I was at the university and I was a journalism major. And I took a marketing class in my junior year and opened up Principles of Marketing by Dr. Philip Kotler. And he said, he defined marketing as a combination of psychology, sociology, and anthropology. And I just thought, wow, I want to do that. That is the coolest job description I have ever heard. Marketing is all things human. It's all things human. And that's an opportunity because we don't really think about it that way. A lot of times we think, marketing is our lead nurturing campaign or our tech stack or something. But at its best, at its heart, marketing is all things human. And I was too broke. I couldn't change my major, but I eventually got into marketing and got an MBA in that discipline.
And when early on did you realize that maybe having to be audacious, especially I think you've done a lot of work in the B2B world where you don't get a lot of audaciousness, you get a lot of boring to board. When did you first see or maybe had an audacious marketing moment that you said, man, we're onto something maybe 4 decades ago?
Well, I actually have a good story for that one too. My inherent skill was not obvious at a young age. I wasn't that great of a baseball player. I wasn't going to make it as an astronaut. And sometimes in my 30s, I see the world in a different way. I see how megatrends come together. I can see where we need to be next. And I was in the corporate world for many years before I started my own thing. And my whole career has been a series of just experiments. Literally, it's just and I didn't really know I was being audacious, but I was all along. I was pushing the boundaries, and as you asked me that question, there was one moment that was kind of fun that came to mind. So I think it was in the 80s or early 90s. This was a time when a lot of sexually transmitted diseases were going around. And I was living in California, and there was an article in the LA newspaper about how people were taking a needle and poking holes in condom packages.
Wow.
What an awful thing, right? What a just, so now I was working in the packaging business, and one of my customers was Fancy Feast cat food, and they had overcapacity for these little 3-ounce cans. And I thought, that's the perfect size to hold some condoms. And you can't, it'd be so safe. And what I learned, Park, was that 98% of the US condom market is 1 mile apart from each other in LA, where I was living. So I visited both of these two companies with my concept, the Candom. You could put 6 of them in this little can. I called it the party pack. In a few weeks, I was learning the ins and outs of the market, and they loved it. It became a hit, and they did commercial tests on it, and there were some reasons why the grocery stores weren't ready for that. But I mean, again, that's sort of an example where you put things together in a new way. You do an experiment. It doesn't always work, but my career has really has been that all along. I've
Mhm.
always been just eager to be the first one to try, something new.
And you were solving two problems in one fell swoop,
Yeah,
right? You
trying.
had
I
extra
actually
cat
I did it. The
food
market just
cans.
wasn't. I'm usually a couple years ahead of my time.
Yeah, you see canned condoms everywhere now, so
Yeah, I mean,
we
if
have
you
you
ever
to
see
thank
it,
for
you'll
that.
know you heard it here first with
Yeah,
Park
you got
Howell.
it.
This is a Park Howell exclusive, everyone.
It's audacious. Well, speaking of audacious, you've written a lot of books in your lifetime, and some could argue, man, when are you going to be done writing? But you keep going. Why this book? Why now? Because so many of yours are maybe they're all bestsellers at this point. They're all on marketing and they're all on point at the time.
Well, a few years ago, I had the great honor of interviewing Tom Peters. Tom Peters, probably the greatest business author of our time, and he was retiring, and he just written his last book. And I got to talk to him. And 2 years later, he was back with a new book. I said, Tom, I thought you were retired. He said, I'm desperate to get my ideas out. I'm just not finished. I just think people haven't listened. And he went on to say that the best writers and the best speakers are great because they're desperate to get their ideas out. And that is really the only reason I write books. As you know, you can't make a lot of money writing books. It's a tremendous sacrifice. It's a tremendous risk, the greatest risk you can have for a personal brand because you can't really take it back. And yet, when I have these ideas, that I know the world needs now. The world, there's a problem out there I can help solve. Then I just go all in. I go all in, and I get truly obsessed in not a healthy way. And I put everything I've got into the book. And I'm so grateful. I'm so fortunate, Park, that the books, like you said, they've been well received. They've been beloved. They've been bestsellers. But you never know. You never know. I never take it for granted, certainly. And my fear is always having that one review where someone says, "Oh, Mark Schaefer's such a nice guy, but the big dummy forgot this." I don't want that to happen. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this new book. When I was finished writing it, I was sad that it was over because I was so energized by this book.
Yeah. Audacious, How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. And I told myself and said to some others about a year and a half ago, I said, AI is going to compound mediocrity at the rate of Moore's Law. And I think it's probably going to 10x that rate of Moore's Law.
We'll love that.
And yours is a book that says, here's how you beat the bots. Yeah. And it goes back to what advertising and marketing has known since the very beginning. The really good ones at it is to be audacious, or to create, as you say, that for me, the through line in this book is that word awe.
Yeah.
How to create awe.
Yeah. Oh, I love that quote. If you had given me that quote 6 months ago, I would have put that in the book, because that's fantastic about this, the bots and mediocrity. It certainly has happened. And I'm glad you picked up on this idea of awe. And you're right that, many, I connect the dots, I think, in a unique way, in an entertaining way. But there's a lot of these ideas have been around for a long time, but it's just been overlooked. And I think somehow we've become intoxicated with just anything digital. We're intoxicated about, making videos for TikTok without really thinking, without really strategizing. I think, performance marketing and performance marketing in the digital age with, Google ads and Facebook ads and, things like SEO has been fantastic. It's been wonderful. But it has also sucked the soul and life out of our stories and our narratives. And it's sort of created this global expectation that, well, if you can measure the ROI of that ad, you should be able to measure the ROI of this story. And so it's ruined true brand marketing for many businesses. And so, this book is kind of a rallying cry saying it's time to wake up. It's time, if you're competent, you're going to be ignored. If you're competent, you're that's not enough anymore. You're going to be vulnerable because AI is competent. AI is excellent. And so somehow we've got to dig deep and find what is the uniquely human places we can dwell and work and learn and work together to transcend the bots.
Give us one of your favorite examples from your book of a company, a brand doing that really well right now.
Oh gosh, there's so many. The one that everybody, the case study in the book, the people seem to really love a lot is Liquid Death. So there's three main sections of the book. One is disrupting the narrative. One is disrupting where the narrative is told. And the third one is who tells the narrative, disrupting the storyteller. And in this section about disrupting the story, I refer to some research from someone who I'm sure you know and love, Jonah Berger. His book Contagious is one of my favorites. And in that book, Dr. Berger talks about why ideas and content go viral. And what do we try to do in marketing? We try to create this emotional connection to our customers. So we mean something. There's this emotional expectation. And Jonah sort of validates that. And he said, the stories and the ideas that go viral create this emotional connection, something that creates awe, something that creates excitement, something that creates happiness, something that creates anxiety. something that creates fear. Now, this whole negative part, these taboos, have been completely overlooked by marketers. And yet it's right there in front of us. So what do we see happening with liquid death? And I know some of your listeners are not in America. They may not be familiar with this product. So liquid death is simply water in a can. And, you asked me about my early days and how I got into marketing. And I distinctly remember one of the first lessons I ever learned was never associate your product with death. So here's this brand, and they're shaking
Unless
up.
you're a mortuary, of course.
Then it's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Here we have this brand coming in to, it is the water market is a pandemic of dull. It's always been the same. It's clear and it's wholesome, and the brands have names like Rainbow Springs. And so it's so interesting. I don't think the founder of Liquid Death really had any passion for water, but he had passion for shaking things up in a boring industry. And that's really an opportunity for any of us, right? So they created a brand by doing everything wrong. They named it Death. They sold it in a can. Their first market was bars, where you usually give water away. I encourage everyone to go on a YouTube and look at some of their ads. I mean, they're cringeworthy. I mean, some of them they're really difficult to watch. There's one commercial. It's just like, oh, this is just too much. They're talking about how dangerous water is. They're trying to say it's not just water. This is the most dangerous product. And this beautiful model is pouring this water, and you don't know where it's going, and it pulls back, and she's doing waterboarding. She's doing waterboarding in a product
With the brand.
for a consumer product brand. They've exploded. They're the fastest growing beverage brand in America, and probably the world. And it's just because I think people are desperate for something interesting. They're desperate for something new, especially young people today. They love quirky things like that.
Well, and they love the stuff that's pushing, society, bureaucracies in the chest, and say that's what my mom and dad might have done, but let's do something a little different and have some fun and kind of make fun of the older folks, right?
Yeah, and another example from that section is Nutter Butter. And again, if you're not familiar what this little peanut butter cookie has been doing to promote their brand, Google that. Look at the ads they're putting on TikTok, and it's like an LSD trip. It's literally like a horror movie, and you just think, what in the world are they doing? And in the last 12 months, Nutter Butter sales have quadrupled. This is a brand that had almost no meaning, no connection to anybody. It was a forgotten brand. And just by stirring it up and doing, breaking some taboos, not in a reckless way, not in an offensive way, not in something that's illegal, but they're just doing something that hasn't been done before. And
Skittles is kind of doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
You see some of their stuff, and you're like, what the hell is that
Skittles
going on here?
Kind of OG disruptive. They've been disrupting for a while, yeah.
Yeah. One of the case studies that you touch on in the book, you don't go into great detail, but it's one of my all-time favorites, and it's REI's Opt Outside campaign. And I had Lee Einhorn on the show several years ago, right after it launched, because I was so blown away by it. And for those of you that don't remember it, REI said, you know what, day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, we're going to opt outside. We're closing all of our stores. We're letting all of our people go and do their thing. And they built such a, as you call it, contagious effervescence.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Collective
effervescence around that particular stunt.
Yeah. I mean, I love everything about that. And it just characterizes so many of the ideas in the book. And the one lesson I think is important from that is a lot of people think, oh, Audacious, we're gonna have our CEO, dress up as a leprechaun or something, right? That doesn't connect you to the brand. I mean, that's just a stunt, right? And what REI is doing is they're doing something that's never been done before, but it's the DNA of the brand. So when you hear about it, you experience it, you internalize the meaning of the brand. And the other thing they did is they leveraged their employees. The employees wrote their own stories about, hey, I live in Sacramento, California, and here are some good things to do on Black Friday instead of going to the store. This is where I'm going to, go. So they leveraged their employees who share that DNA, who share that passion as content creators and as ambassadors. And so there's just so much about that. It's a legendary idea.
It really is. And then they invited their customers, myself included, opt outside, don't go into a mall. I never go out on Black Friday anyways, but take pictures. Then they gave you images, watermarks, if you will, that you could post on your image to demonstrate that you were a part of this active movement of opting outside and talking about where you're going. So they really, really did a nice job of extending the brand story there.
Yeah, they're a great marketing company overall.
Yeah. Now, a lot of these in here they're almost like unicorn marketing in that they're so brilliant. They're obviously, a lot of them cost a heck of a lot of money. And as I was reading through this, I say this is a really fun read, but what do the rest of us do when maybe it's just a consultant listening to this show right now and saying, I've got to get some more attention. How can I be audacious? And I got $100 to do it with.
Well, I tried to serve that market because that's definitely, my background as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the case studies are pretty bombastic, but there's actually a point in the book I said, well, you're probably thinking right now, that's great, but I don't have $1 million. This chapter is for you. So in every section of the book, there are case studies of no or low budget, right? No or low budget. And I also try to be very diverse in terms of, is this B2B? Is this B2C? Could this be applied to a university or a nonprofit? So there's definitely something in there for everyone. And honestly, Park, I think this book is really for smaller businesses. Smaller businesses, they're hungry to do something more. They're ready to experiment. You've got a small chain of command that says, yeah, go make something happen. These big companies, and that's the world I usually live in, they're tethered to global advertising contracts. They don't want to really change anything. They don't want to do anything that they can't delegate to an ad agency. And the bigger the brand, the more they have to lose. So there's a lot more, legal ramifications. So I think, yeah, there's some pretty crazy examples in the book, but I think where we're going to see the real action is going to be with the small and medium-sized brands with this book.
And you talk about, too, in the book, this pandemic of dullness that we find ourselves in, and it feels like we just are going in deeper and deeper and deeper. I mean, I can't even tell you the last time I watched a commercial and laughed out loud and said, wow, they hit that one, they nailed it. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I think there's an entire industry infrastructure that rewards dull. So I think there's a lot of fear. There's a fear of losing a customer. There's a fear of doing something that the industry has never done before. Maybe there's a fear of losing your job. And another part of this fear, I call it the Bud Light shakes. I was I did a workshop at a big consumer product company, one of the biggest in the world, about a year ago. And the CMO of this company kicked off this session, and he literally said these words. He said, we all must remember we are just one post away from becoming Bud Light. And of course, Bud Light had this big, financial meltdown because of one blog post, that was controversial.
Well,
on
they had a transgender
yeah,
transvestite on there, and it just blew
yeah.
them out of the water.
And it blew it out of the water, and it was controversial in many different ways. But again, it's basically what he's saying is we just can't be bold. We just can't, do anything different. And fear is really pervasive in our industry. And there are reasons to be conservative if the law says you should be conservative, like in pharma, many cases. In pharma, you don't want to go to jail. There could be good reasons, but if you're afraid because the company culture isn't there, or you're not there, or you're afraid of what the customers are going to, what your competitors are going to do. If you're being held back by fear, now is the time to really to think about that and challenge yourself, because the the bots are coming. They're coming. And
They're here.
and if you're just living in Vanilla Valley, you're going to get overwhelmed by the bots. I'm
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat this and say everything's going to be all right. There's going to be job loss. There already has been job loss. Some of my agency friends have lost customers already. So,
hmm
it's something to take seriously, but I think my book is also a book of hope.
We'll be right back with Mark Schaefer and his book, Audacious. And as he points out, it's a book that will give you hope, how to stand out in a very noisy and now AI-driven world. But I've got an AI tool for you, too, that is going to give you immense help and hope when it comes to refining your brand story. And that is our new Story Cycle Genie that has taken our Story Cycle system, bottled it in a genie so that now you can refine, revise, and implement, operationalize your brand story in minutes, not months. I've been taking a group of professionals through our beta test this month, and I've got Amy Yakowski here for you. She is the founder of Painted Porch Strategies, which works with leadership teams, especially as they are going through disruption, to be able to smooth out that disruption and take advantage of all the changes happening in the world. She put her brand through the Story Cycle Genie, and here's what she had to say about it.
I really enjoyed it. The thing that stood out to me was I had never thought to position my brand and our services as, academic rigor with real world experience. And I was like, I never thought that it was academic, but I guess it is, because I have done a lot of certifications and I know, it's like I've spent a lot of money and time over the years researching this. So I actually really appreciated that it called that out, because otherwise I wouldn't have thought to focused on that. And I was like, oh, that is a bit of a differentiator for sure. I thought it did a really good job of really just homing in on the essence of who we are and what it is we're seeking to achieve without, 75 different documents or blog posts or videos or web pages or what have you. Well, I think what you put together is great so far. I really enjoyed using it, because sometimes AI can be a little intimidating, but
Yeah.
I feel like you trained it well to know how to prompt. But then I loved when I gave it feedback. I just loved the language that it presented back. It was very conversational. It was very relatable. It was like, that's a great point. I didn't think about that. I was like, well, thank you. So it did a good job in that realm too, that it was very complimentary of the user for pointing out something.
If you would like to learn more about the Story Cycle Genie and our launch this March, then check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, storycycle-genie. Hope to see you there. Now let's get back to our show. Last week, I had on the show a really fun brander by the name of Allison Capaldi. She works with Robert Wolf. They launched Moose Jaw Mountaineering back in the day to make online retail fun again, and did some really crazy stuff. They did a catalog during the recession that all the models were bottomless. because they said, look, you can only afford half the stuff. So we're just going to sell you the stuff up top. And, they did funny things like that. She said they also talked about like little things they did. A receipt that you get. And at the bottom of the receipt is this inane little content typically, and they would put little notes to the buyer in there. And she said, granted, only 2% of the people ever read that far down, but those 2% were now customers for life because they were lit in on a little joke.
Yeah. I love that because, again, it shows, you don't have to be intimidated by budget and money. And I try to even make a case in the book that if you've got a big budget, that might even hurt your cause. There's lots of examples in the book. One of my favorites is it's a B2B cybersecurity firm. Very complicated topic, very boring topic. And they made this breakthrough by teaching about what their services do through a card game. And this card game became so popular, it is now being used as a teaching tool with the U.S. government, with universities, with nonprofits. They're now selling expansion packs through Amazon, and this thing cost them, the cost of making it $3. $3 a pack.
And it just took on a life of its own, didn't it? I mean, it actually built a community around itself.
Yeah. So it's you don't need to have a big budget. You don't need to have a sexy product. It doesn't need to be B2C. There's examples in the book that I think will inspire everyone.
It reminded me of something that I had completely forgotten about that I had done once upon a time, and it was really more spur of the moment than actually planned audaciousness. But when I was running my ad agency, Park & Co., I had these stress balls, the things, the little squeezy balls, and our logo was the ampersand was on a pool ball because we had a pool table in our office. And so I made a bunch of these stress balls. We give them out to everybody. And I was invited to go and do a panel discussion and a keynote for a sustainability conference in Phoenix. And this was early in the days of green marketing and sustainability. And I had a bunch of these balls with me, and I had them on stage. We did the panel, and then I was invited. We wanted the audience to ask questions, but everybody was silent as silent could be. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start winging these balls at you. If you don't catch it, you have to ask a question. And I did it, bounced it off the first guy, said, all right. Everyone started laughing. He asked a really good question. It broke the ice.
Yeah.
I threw it another. Some people caught it and threw them back. And anyways, we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
In the audience became one of my great, great friends and colleagues, a gentleman by the name of Bruno Sarda. Bruno at the time was working for Dell Computer, living in Phoenix, working in Austin, and he was in supply chain sustainability. Bruno and I became fast friends, and we did a lot of stuff together. He actually invited me to teach a course at Arizona State University with him, which I did for 5 years, a master's course in sustainable storytelling using my systems and whatever. Later on, he went on to a big brand out in Manhattan. He invited me out. Can you come on out and teach our team all about this stuff? And we were having dinner that night in Manhattan. And this is now 10 years after the ball bit, right? And I asked Bruno, I go, where did we get connected again, and how did that all work? And he goes, you mean you don't remember? He looked a little crestfallen. I go, I honestly don't. I just know it was around green marketing, sustainability in Phoenix. He goes, it was when you were doing that panel discussion and you started throwing red ampersand squishy balls at people and made them catch them. Otherwise, they had to ask a question. He goes, I thought that was a brilliant way to handle an audience. And I'm like, I had no idea. That little stunt led me to working with Dell, led me to teach at ASU, led me out to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it was just one little spontaneous, awesome little moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because, again, it just sort of is the business case for experimentation. And today, it costs less to try new things than any time in our history because you can test things on the internet. You can prototype things with AI. And so this idea of just, adding awe to your marketing, adding some audacity to your marketing, it's simpler and cheaper than ever.
And it's way more fun than AI.
Yeah.
So you obviously are not shunning AI altogether. It's a part of our lives, and you got to use it and understand it and play with it. And it does deliver some really good things. How do you use it in your world?
The most significant way I use it on the book, I wrote the book myself. It is my words. But when the book was finished, I uploaded the entire book to ChatGPT and to Claude. And I said, read the book and tell me what is missing. And of course, this takes 3 seconds. And both of them came back with the same answer. And it said, you need to have a chapter on measurement. Now, in my original outline for the book, I had a chapter on measurement, but the book was getting too long. I was getting too tired, and I just sort of overlooked it. And because of the feedback from AI, I added a new chapter on measurement on a more micro sort of granular level. I mean, I spend most of my time alone as a writer, as a coach, as a consultant. I do travel to speak, of course, but so I mean, ChatGPT has become my constant companion, just to bounce ideas off of it, or help me refine ideas, or help me brainstorm. I even will use it as a productivity tool in the car. The phone, the smartphone ChatGPT app, you can talk to it. So you might have an idea, and you might just, you're driving in the car, just bounce ideas off of ChatGPT, and when your conversation is over, there's a written transcript of what you said. So you get home, and then you can download that and go from there. So I mean, I'm trying to push the edges and use AI as an experimentation tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things about AI is there's research that's been showing that when business professionals use AI, it creates separation between the best. So even when everybody uses AI, the people who are already good in their field became better. It created this gap between them and competitors. So for all your friends listening to us today, I mean, immerse yourself in this, right? Use it every day. Push the boundaries. Try to break the thing. See how far it can go. Be an open learner. Don't be afraid. I mean, do not be afraid. This is not going away. It's becoming more powerful. It's becoming, more intelligent, more useful in a lot of ways. And you've got to find ways to use it for your business.
Mm-hmm.
Innovation in the future is going to be applying a layer of AI to everything we do. And that means us marketers, creators, and storytellers as well.
Yeah, and when it first came out, I was like, "Oh God, here we go again! I've got to learn something new." And then I just started playing with it. Our son Parker does a whole lot of work in AI, and so he kept saying, "Dad, check this out." He was great. He kept feeding me a bunch of things, and then Sean Schroeder showed up, and he said, "Hey, we could take your story cycle system and build an AI agent out of it," which we did.
Yeah.
And the whole idea there is not to replace creativity, but to inspire creativity. So now you can take a process that would typically take you weeks, if not months, to do in crafting a brand story strategy, and you can literally do it in minutes. And it's pretty amazing the content that it gives back to you. But then you take that as a humanoid, and instead of spending all that blood, sweat, and tears on a blank page to try to get through all the discovery and research, it does that for you, so you can now use your energy and your enthusiasm to iterate on it, to be inspired on it, and to build that awesomeness that you talk about in your book.
Yeah, you put me through that. You did one of those for me, and it's legit. I mean, it really is. It's legit. I haven't had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it certainly was very, very powerful and useful, Park.
Well, that's good. And that took me exactly 5 minutes, and all I did was I uploaded your website and your personal brand website and what was it, the Harvard Review website on your book and the Amazon website on your book. It doesn't ask any questions whatsoever. I just put it in there and say, how is Mark Schaefer showing up in the world? and it gives you a brand definition. And because I'm not, intimately knowledgeable about your brand definition, I said, yep, that's good, go. And then it spelled out the rest of your brand as it relates to the Audacious book. And one of the things that I was really happy about, as I ran the Genie through my own Genie, it was very meta, I came up with the emotional promise of being enthralled, because I saw people using it and their eyes would light up like, oh my God, they were like literally enthralled. So when I picked up Audacious and read that singular narrative in your book is about creating awe, I looked up enthrall and all. Enthrall is to captivate the fascinated attention. And I thought, okay, maybe we've got something audacious here too.
Yes. Yeah. For absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's one of the big ideas of the book, is to look at marketing in a new way, that, we're trying to create this emotional connection. We're trying to create this collective effervescence. What would it look like if your marketing plan is to add more awe? What would that do to your customer relationships?
And Mark, let's wrap up the conversation here in a few minutes and I was wondering if you would take the listeners through, because I thought this tool on page 226, when you start outlining the Audacity Index, because it's one thing to talk about it, and that's kind of opaque. You can show it in action, but how do you measure it now? How do I know that I'm being audacious, I'm creating awe, or I'm enthralling my audience?
Yeah. Well, it took a lot of work to really dig down and figure that out, because it's a new idea, it's a new concept, and it's not perfect, because I think every company that uses this, it would be, how they use it would be specific to that company. So it's not like, a ruler or a yardstick that everybody could use. You've really got to use it your way. And the reason for that is, let's say you're a law firm. You're a law firm in Boston, and this is an industry where boring has been institutionalized. The industry has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. The family names have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they've all done things the same way. And so even something very small, a small change, could rate relatively high on this Audacity Index. So it sort of, acknowledges that it's going to be different for everybody. The risk, the cultural change. Culture is a big part of this, and so that's part of this index, is like, how difficult was this for us? If was this like some little incremental thing that nobody's going to pay attention to, or is this something where, we really put something on the line here? And that, again, that's relative for every type of business and every type of industry. But it does give a framework of 5 different components that you can look at to sort of see, how are we doing? Are we moving beyond competence? Are we moving into something new? Do we have the right trajectory for our company? And I think that's the usefulness of the tool.
And so you've got the disruption factor. And I guess that's sort of subjective. You go in and you look at an idea and decide amongst yourself, how disruptive is it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I had some people in the industry take a look at this and sort of validate that this concept would be useful to people who are in the creative business. And they said, wow, we really love this. We would actually love to see tests on this. I think the next step would be research to show, okay, you can look at a campaign, you can look at a company, and you could put it through the Audacity Index. And then over time, you could compare their financial results. They said that would be the next part of research that would be really interesting.
And then you've got the awe quotient, and it says here, to what degree does your campaign create genuine wonder, surprise, and collective effervescence? And again, kind of a subjective decision. You got to sit there creatively and say, yeah, I think we're really doing that, or we're kind of doing that.
Right. But if you read sort of through the philosophy and methodology in the book, how I talk about awe, I think it's pretty easy to see, well, today all we're doing is, ads and magazines. That's probably not creating awe. So just bringing people together in a meaningful way, that could be a big step forward. And that would really increase the, your score on an Audacity index to do something that really is creating this collective effervescence.
And you have the conversation catalyst, and that is whatever you're doing out there, is it actually triggering additional conversations and becoming more viral? People are talking about your stunt, your marketing, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, this book is a big advocate for word of mouth marketing. That's another example of something that's been right in front of us. It's been there forever, and most businesses ignore it. And one of the reasons they ignore it is because it is more difficult to measure than like a Facebook ad or something like that. But it's also the most powerful thing you can do because it's organic advocacy. So I think for a company to take a step forward with word of mouth marketing is a huge step in the right direction.
I think of all of them, of the five, is number 4 is the one that I believe maybe most brands have a challenge with, and that's the risk ceiling.
Yeah.
When you are in breaking taboos, because people cancel culture, everything going on around us this day, people are like, oh, just let me, rappel back into my shell and not take on any taboos.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And when, if you're in a company and a culture where your tendency is to put your head in the sand, that means the bots are going to win.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger. You have to be our age to appreciate that reference.
I appreciate it.
And then finally, innovative execution. And boy, that it all comes down to execution, doesn't it? You could have the greatest idea in the world, and if you don't execute on it, boom, you're done.
Yeah, 100%. A great example of that, one that's close to me, is the cover of the book. So the cover of the book itself is a conversation piece. It's the first book in the world that is different every time. The book cover has an augmented reality experience that is inspired by the stories in the book, and it transforms the cover of the book into abstract art. I'll tell you, Park, that was not the first idea that we worked with. And, to write a book called Audacious, I thought, well, I got to figure out a way to be audacious. And we had come up with an idea that was like an extreme version of the book. And we just went down this path. And I actually spent quite a bit of money on this idea. And it just got to a point where it was going to cost like $50 per book. And it just wasn't going to work in this kind of industry. Not that I wasn't willing to spend money to take a big swing, but just, the economics of books, it just didn't make sense. So then this new idea started percolating about, what if we had nothing on the cover but a QR code? Where would that QR code go? What would it mean? What would it do? And again, the first idea was, well, what if it was a quest? What if it was a game? What if it led to this new world that was populated by characters in the book? Again, that started to get too complicated, too expensive. And then, someone said, well, what if it was a book that was never the same? I thought, well, okay, that's a big idea. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it was not easy. It was about a six-month technological development. But, again, I think it's worth it. And, talk about, really pushing me and my business in terms of the risk and the culture and new technology. I mean, this for me, a little business, this was a 10 out of 10. But the reason I loved it is because it also teaches the stories of the book. It disrupts how the story is told. It disrupts where the story is told. It disrupts who's telling the story. A book cover is telling the darn story. So I'm pretty happy with it.
That's awesome. Is Audacious the most audacious thing you've ever done in your marketing career?
Maybe other than the Candoms. I don't know.
With that, Mark, I will say thank you. Oh, man, I appreciate you being here. Yours is the marketing newsletter I look forward to every week, and it's the one I share more than anybody else.
That's
You
high
always
praise.
have such
Thank
great
you.
insight in there, and I really appreciate you bringing your knowledge and wisdom to our world and not retiring. Keep doing what your mentor said. Share your ideas.
I love what I do. I'm having fun every day, and I'm helping people. I'm really having an impact on people's lives. So,
Yeah.
why would I stop?
Well, I look forward to the next time we can get together. Sorry, I'm going to miss you at Social Media Marketing World this year. I've got a conflict on that date, but we'll find another time.
All right. Thank you so much, Park.
Well, I hope you had as much fun listening to this show as I did recording it with Mark. And if you know of anyone who would benefit from his wisdom and his wit and his audaciousness, then by all means share this show with them. And if you haven't read Audacious yet, I highly recommend adding it to your marketing library. We talked about the Story Cycle Genie a lot in this show, and if you want to learn more about it, just check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. We will be launching it very soon, and there will be a lot of great discounts available for the launch. So when you go to that site, businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie, you can register for the pre-launch festivities. I have another treat for you next Monday when entrepreneurial phenom and startup wizard Gregory Shepard will join us to talk about his new book, The Startup Life Cycle, the definitive guide to building a startup from idea to exit. Given that Gregory sold one of his companies to eBay for north of $900 million, well, he knows what he's talking and writing about. So I hope you'll join us for that show. And until then, remember that the most potent story you are ever going to tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.